morning, everybody. Coach Griff here with the Elf Scully Fight Team doing another episode of 2 FMA-Nerds talking about stuff. So my guest today is Kevin Goat from Kevin Goat Self-Defense. I just butchered that, but it's okay. It's an early morning. I don't have enough coffee yet. So anyways, I'm going to bring him on. We're going to get into some cluckery and yeah, just come hang out. Tell me where you're at. Hit all the buttons and here we go. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Very good, brother. How are you doing?
Not bad. So since I butchered the intro and introduction, because I don't have enough coffee, let's go ahead and tell the people who you are and what you do, and then we can circle around with some stuff while I share out.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, on all the socials, right, it's basically self-defense with Kevin Goat, spelled with an S. We spell it the American way because 90% of our audience is from America. But that is changing. It's starting to get definitely more worldwide, which is pretty cool. Any of the handles are at self-defense goat. And then I'm based out of Calgary, Alberta. My dojo is Calgary Gong Fu Academy. If you want to just check out kind of my bio and what we do here, just calgarygongfu.com. So
awesome. So we were talking before loosely about having a variety of an interesting background and having that eclectic approach like most people do, and there's this consistent debate about classical lineages and then just doing stuff. So let's start from the beginning. Let's dive personally into the beginning. So where are you from and how did you get into martial arts?
Calgary, Alberta, born and raised. Got into martial arts because I was a little shit. My mom was like, "You're getting in trouble," right? I was like 5 or 6 years old, and it's like obviously this kid has I don't know, now they'd call it ADD or ADHD, right? I personally don't like labels, right? Because that just means I'm gonna be thrown on some pharmaceutical medication. And don't get me wrong, it has its time and place, but for me it was just okay. He needs an outlet, right? That's when they threw me wherever we were, like what community center was ever offering karate at the time. Did karate for I don't know, maybe 2 semesters or something like that. From karate, there was definitely a passion that was awoke from that, and that pushed me into taekwondo. Taekwondo, working with my sensei Gary Lloyd. He's still teaching. Like I think he's like 65. He might even be older, but let's just say he's 65. He's still teaching. He's still doing his thing. He's still competing. Like it's pretty awesome to see. I ran into him probably like 15 years ago, and he's like, "Kevin," I'm like, "Sensei, like, how are you?" Right? We were both at the martial arts store. He's like, "Damn, you're big now, bro." Right? Because it had been so many years. So did martial arts with him. That was growing up in the northeast side of the city. Eventually, we ended up moving. We grew up in a not so good part of the city, right? So like our car got stolen, our next door neighbor's car got stolen, our truck got stolen, the houses got broken into, and my mom was like, "Enough is enough. Let's move to the northwest." So it was like a 35-minute commute, and that was just too far, right? So got out of taekwondo, even though I love Sensei Gary Lloyd stuff. Maybe a year off, give or take, and then made some friends. Found kickboxing, got into kickboxing, did that for a couple of years. Then I was like 14 or 15, and I was like, "Oh, hey, girls, what's up? Oh, hey, cars, what's going on?" Right? So took a couple of years off there, and then got back into it. It was actually kung fu. Now, long story short, if you've ever seen the commercials with Grandmaster Simon and Temple Kung Fu, right? It was this big thing, and there was this whole lawsuit and all this crazy things that came with it. But I started teaching martial arts. I was a salesman selling phones after school, and I was making bank, man. Like back in the time, it was like $90,000 a year selling cell phones, and you're like, "Damn, okay." So I gave it all up to teach for $6 an hour. Right? So it was like, okay. My mom was like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "You were set, things are good." And I was like, "Well, I just want to I want to love what I do, right? I don't want to be sitting behind an office. I don't want to be or behind a desk, sorry, in an office. I just wanted to basically not ever go to work again." So They offered me a job. I was training there. They're like, you can kick, you can kind of punch. You know, let's teach you some kung fu, which is really basically kempo karate. Mixed it with some bastardized like Shaolin kung fu and kung fu techniques, and kind of my first introduction, unbeknownst to me, of like a mixed system, right, of many styles being molded together. So um, we became broke. They had 5 studios. The lawsuits were catching up to them. 5 studios went down to 2 studios. 2 studios went down to 1 studio. We lost power. We were actually teaching under like candlelight. We weren't able to use the washrooms. And you know, when you're making $6 an hour and you're going to work and people are like, "We're paying our dues. Why aren't the lights on?" So I got out of that. That's when I joined the military, spent 3 years in the military, came out of the military, injured, all messed up, back's all messed up, knees are all messed up, everything's messed up, as I'm sure you know all too well, my friend. And then I came back and I started working with a guy named Brian Willis. He does winningmindtraining.com. He was the head police service trainer for CPS, Calgary Police Service. And it was cool working with him. I was working with commissioners at the time too, which is basically just like all the security guys in the city. I was learning a whole bunch of stuff on the combative side of things. I was building programs. I was doing a whole bunch of different things like that. Met a whole bunch of cool people along the way. Tom Gillis, you know, just awesome people. Then I got introduced to Filipino martial arts, and man, I dove deep dive into that. Right, so it was basically okay. Like, this is cool. Stick and a knife speaks to me. You know, I had done lots of staff work. I had done a little bit of sword work. I would always hang out with like the drunken kung fu guys, and whenever they were doing seminars locally, and it was cool and all, but I was like, this is arts, you know, this isn't that way. This isn't martial, right? And Filipino martial arts was like, I could see a stick being used. That's a baton. That's a tire iron, right? I could see a knife being used. We live in Canada. We don't have to worry about guns too much, but I do worry about a knife, right? So um, that was cool. That was cool to basically start my journey down the Filipino martial arts with that. And that's when I met Guro Joel Hungar. He's my boy. He's my guru. He's a good man. Um, he opened up that door and he introduced me into his style, which is Mati Arnis, or it used to be called Mati Arnis. That turned into what is now known as Boondock Eskrima. Obviously, he has a background with Taboada Balintawak. He's doing his own style of Taboada Balintawak now, but always giving lineage to Grandmaster Bobby Taboada. I mean, man, when I got to see him move in real life, I was like, there's something special here. You know, like at 72, if I can move like that, like this is cool. His short range power is amazing, right? And it's pretty cool to see that. So, yeah, and then that kind of just got the ball rolling. Then it was jiu-jitsu, then it was Hapkido, then it was still did kickboxing, still did everything. Started teaching full time again in 2012. Um, Went to school for rehab therapy. Veteran Affairs was nice enough to pay for that because I was like, I'm all fucked up. Like, teach me how to fix myself at least, right? Because I'm gonna keep training. I'm gonna keep hurting myself. I'm gonna keep this addiction going, right? Even if it hurts my body, but this is my passion. This is my soul. And then I started my own dojo 5 years ago now. 5 years ago now, and things are phenomenally good. Other than all the bullshit with COVID that we had to deal with here in Canada and the ridiculous laws that I made it through it. 7 of my boys did not, right? So that's 7 schools that shut down, right? Because of the bullshit laws that just didn't need to take place. So, yeah, and now life is good, man. I mean, I did Wing Chun in there too, traveled the world, did a whole bunch of Wing Chun, got my Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt a couple months ago under Sensei Alex Rogue. Created my own system in that whole process on the flights back and forth to Hong Kong and Sweden and London and Tunisia. And it was cool, man. Like, I got to travel the world. I got to meet cool people. I got to keep doing it. And now I just get to wake up every day and do what I love. And now I'm semi-retired and loving life, man. It's good. I mean, I got time to, do a podcast with you, which is pretty sweet, and get to meet another cool dude in the community. So
That's awesome, man. Going back to with it, thank you for your service from one veteran to another.
cheers, man.
And it's holding accountable to our governments for the volunteerism that we did during that time and getting them to take care of us on the back end, and the fact that we actually can, it's important. And I
Yeah,
really wish more veterans would come out of that victim state and engage in that post traumatic growth mindset and seek out those services and like take accountability of like, yeah, you signed up, yeah, you may be fucked up or not, but you can move forward, you can heal. Just like anything else, we go to the gym to get stronger, we go to a garage to get our truck fixed, and why not go seek some mental health to get us emotionally, spiritually healed and move forward? So
yeah,
yeah,
man.
congrats on finding that end and pursuing that, and also continuing to help within the community for that.
Yeah, well, it was tough. I mean, to be honest, without going like too far down it, I never did any tours. I got in some shit. I got injured. I lost my tour, right? But I
Hmm.
buried 9 of my friends in 6 months, right?
Yeah.
And like that's tough. You have survivor's guilt. You have all this, but the craziest part was like I came back and I was an angry fucking dude, right?
Yeah.
Like
Same.
I was,
Same.
yeah, right. Like you got to deal with it, right? So there's outlets and things like that, and mental health is obviously super super important, but it was actually getting the psychology help of the programming that every soldier goes through to do what they need to do. And I get why the programming exists, but it's also like it's crazy, man. It's crazy how long I got to the idea that because I didn't go overseas, it's okay. Right. And it took me a long time to get over that. Right. And all the pain I've been in and everything that I have to deal with on a daily basis, I felt like I deserved that pain because I didn't go overseas and because I wasn't killed. Right. And, like I felt bad for getting help from Veteran Affairs because I never seen tour, I never seen an action, I never seen this shit. Right. And for all my boys that have got the help, or I should say are trying to get the help, like Veteran Affairs is not great, to be perfectly honest. I'm sure you know what that's all about because the States, I've heard it's even worse, right? But it's like reach out, suck your fucking ego up, let it go. Yeah, you're a man, hoorah, you're fucking alpha bro, like great. Now go get the fucking help you need so your family doesn't have to deal with your bullshit, right? And that's a man to me, is somebody that can really like own up to their shit. They know that they're suffering, not just physically, because physical is easy. Like, I feel bad, Ben Repairs should pay for my massages and my surgeries, right? But what about your mental health, right? And I would say of all the things that I've been very lucky to get, it was the 40 plus hours of psychological help to deprogram me to learn how to become a civilian again, right? And like, go get help. If there's any veterans watch right now, like, go get help, guys. Reach out, suck your ego up, go get the help because that's just gonna get you killed one day. You're gonna be angry. You're gonna fucking throw a fist at somebody. He's gonna pull out a gun or a knife and just stab the shit out of you, right? Why? Because you have ego issues. Like, come on, right? And so it's been cool to be able to watch that. I've done some corner work for some MMA fighters, and a lot of those guys, were veterans. Like my buddy Jesse Veltri, he was one of the first guys in Canada to have a service dog in the ring. Obviously not while he's fighting, right? But it's like that was cool. I was very proud to be a part of that because it was like he was getting the help he needs. When you go from, I don't know how many pills he was at, but like when you go from like 50 pills a day down to 3 because now you have a dog, like that says something. So
Yeah, that's the thing about accountability and responsibility. Because if we want to have these freedoms after indentured servitude, because let's face it, military service is indentured servitude, uh, volunteer at that. But the fact is, if we want to express and live that life of liberty and freedom, well, we have to take the responsibility and the accountability of that by going and seeking the means and methods to do better. And
yeah,
yeah, that the Survivors Guild having not been there, done that. I mean, we were at war for 20 years, and it's amazing that so many people did not make it to the sandbox, myself included.
yeah,
But
yeah,
the causal effect that that community has, I mean, we're forever touched, as is the rest of the world for it. But like having lived in that community, operated in that community, and felt the lives lost because of that, not just like physically lives lost, because I mean I've lost a fair amount of friends as well due to combat, and more importantly, more from suicide. But it's still the lives lost of that innocence, that the mentality of growth. Because I often look back and into literature as to how many poets, painters, deep thinkers, and artists did we lose to war, and not just in the physical aspect, but like spiritually and intellectually. And so when it comes to martial arts, it is a process of healing. But again, with the military, our programming is default aggression. Our language of emotional capacity is default aggression, because our fear response or anger, our fear response defaults to anger, and that defaults to aggression. It's that whole thing, like turn pain into purpose. But it's a misnomer, because turn pain into purpose, but turn that purpose into peace, not just fight through it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but that is particular to that situation. But I have to look at life after the fight. You gotta look at life after service. And also you gotta deal with this thing like the conditional identity valuation thing of like, we were so conditioned that we are soldiers, we are warriors, this is who we are, this is what we do. And part of that equates to that this is all that we can be, and our currency is based upon our capability. And if we can't fight or haven't been blooded and tested, then our value is lessened. And that's a hard thing to deprogram, because violence is a currency. And with cultures like that, especially in the military, and we'll go back to your upbringing, is that when violence is a currency and a sense of identity, that is very damaging for like that growth mindset. Because as men, as warriors, we are more than our violence. We're more than our violent capability, because we're fathers, we're husbands, we're men who love our community. And this is why we signed up in the first place, in a righteous standpoint, for that act of service, for the love of that community.
Yeah, and I think that's why, like, a lot of people, first of all, like, beautifully said, man. Like, it's so true, right? But I think that's why martial arts, especially jujitsu, right? And FMA to a degree, because FMA brings in the idea of extreme violence. Like you're teaching yourself and students how to kill people, basically, right? But in jujitsu, like it gives you a feeling like you're fighting, right? It gives you a feeling like I'm able to let this anger outside of me become something in a safe environment amongst other people who also want to better themselves, right? And I think that's what's so awesome. That's why I encourage like so many veterans, like just come in and train, come in and do something. I don't care if you come to me. I mean, I'm very proud that we have 3 million plus subscribers. We just hit 1 billion views. Like my face is in people's fucking pants, right? Like it's awesome. Like I never ever thought that this would happen, nor did we plan on it, right? We filmed a video, the video went viral, and now it's become something cool, which is great. But the amount of emails I get from people like, man, I'm a veteran. I was in the car the other day. I seen your road rage video, and then, like the road rage video had no martial arts in it, right? But it had the spiritual aspect of like, check your ego, right? He's like, I got out of the car. My wife's in the car. The kids are in the back. My wife's like, just stay in the car, right? He goes to take a step out. Buddy steps out of his truck, points a gun at him. He gets back in his car. That could have been the end of his life right there, right? And I think that's where it's, if you don't have an outlet, you don't know how to deal with that stuff, right? You feel like you need to fight, but that's where, if you feel like you need to fight, get into a dojo and fight, right? You're gonna be better off no matter what it is that you do, right? What style, whatever, right? It's going to be there. But I think it's very important, especially as men these days, to be a man, to have the capability for violence without having to use violence, right? Like there is a time and place where we need to become a warrior. And I think a lot of us feel that. I think a lot of men, and it's not alpha men, it's not beta men, it's nothing like that. But I think a lot of men have this feeling inside of them like, it's okay to feel that, but society is kind of pushing it the other way right now, right? Where it's like, don't be a man, don't do this, don't be capable of violence. But it's like, be capable of that violence, but don't be violent, right? Like that's really the goal, right? And I think that's why we need outlets like martial arts, because we have to, right? But then we can go down the whole world of what is actual self-defense.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
a whole other bucket. Yeah.
oh man, that's such a, and in the age of the internet, we pontificate, we argue, but not a lot of work gets done with that. And I mean, we'll touch on that a little bit later. But back to the thing about the accountability of a man. Men are emotional creatures. And it's okay to acknowledge that, and it's okay to subcompartmentalize when necessary. However, life after the fight, life after engagement, life after violence, we are so much more than our capacity for violence. And more importantly, it's because our emotional breadth that we don't tap into. Luckily, the culture's changed. That the reasons why we fight is we do it out of love. We do it because we love our community, we love our spouse, we love our children, and we're willing to do the sacrifice to make sure that they will not have to face this danger, this evil, and this violence. And I mean, that sacrifice is a symbol of love. I mean, it's the embodiment of love. So for men out there to reframe that mindset of, violence and fighting, sure, but the reasons why behind that is you love your community, you love your family, and you love the things that you love, so you're willing to fight for it. I mean, this is reasons why we go to, on a personal basis, it's the reasons why we go to war, is because we love an ideal. We love this our perspective of our freedom and our liberty. And so, and then it turns into this aspect on a very personal level of, we love the brothers and sisters next to us who are willing to sacrifice just in the same for that same cause. Because the lie of patriotism, let's just put it, in a post 9/11 world, we were lied to flat out about that, our engagement in Iraq. Afghanistan, different story. But when it came to young 19 years old, because when I enlisted at 19 years old, I was all sort of hot and ready, like, let's go kill, retribution. And it was all for the sake of patriotism and that community upbringing. And just as I've gotten older and had to look at this, it's like, well, they preyed upon me as they preyed upon millions of others, and as they had, as organizations and governments have done for centuries. So I don't know. It's a complicated issue.
We can go down that rabbit hole, but we got to be careful to a degree too, right? Because it's like there's this fine line of, you called it patriotism, and I definitely understand why you would call it that in America, because you guys are some of the most patriotic beings on the planet. Right? Like when I travel to the States, like I'm actually envious of it. Right? Like it's cool to see. Like when I flew down for my black belt test, it was on Remembrance Day in Canada, so November 11th. And I fly in and we drive into this small town, and it is just lined of American flags, right? For all the veterans that have passed. And in Canada, people are scared to wear a fucking poppy, right? Because they're like, cancel culture is going to come after me and this and that. And it's like, no, nobody fucking cares. Nobody actually cares. And I shouldn't say nobody, right? Because it's an absolute term, right? But it is becoming a smaller and smaller percentage of the population that are okay to stand up for what it was. Like my grandfather was in World War II.
As was both of mine.
Yeah, right. So he was conscripted, as they were back then, right? Conscripted. And he ended up getting into the Air Force. He was shot down over Germany, right? And ended up in a POW camp in Germany for 959 days, right? He wrote a book. It was basically his journal, right? 959 days of hell. A&E did like a little story on it back, early 90s, right? And it's like, it's crazy to read his journal and to see what he went through, right? And the amount of, like, he wouldn't go near a dog because dogs ate his friends, right? And like that's like he was terrified of German shepherds forever, right?
Mhm.
But that's one of the reasons why I wanted to join, right? Was to honor my grandfather, to be able to do something. But for me, patriotism came in the form of helping somebody that couldn't help themselves, right? And
Mhm.
that's where, like, in Afghanistan, it was crazy because my whole reason for joining was to go to Afghanistan and to stop the fucking Taliban from what they were fucking doing because it was wrong.
Mhm.
It was wrong that they were going around and killing all these people and doing all these things. And it wasn't until after when I was talking to my psychologist, he goes, Kevin, you would do anything for your family, right? I'm like, anything. I'm like, I would die for them. I'm like, I would go to jail for them. I'm like, I would do whatever it takes. He goes, okay, let's find another perspective, right? Because it's all about finding perspectives. And he goes, you're a 12-year-old boy.
Mhm.
You're in Afghanistan. Taliban break into your house one night. You have, let's say, five sisters, two little brothers, right? Your mom and your dad are there, right? And they say, we will kill your whole family unless you join the Taliban. What do you do? And you
Mm.
know that, it's not a bullshit fucking statement. They will murder your family in front of you. So you join the Taliban. And then as time goes on, the Taliban is just like the government per se, they're going to
Mhm.
program you eventually and put you in the shit long enough that you believe what you're actually doing is good, right?
Mhm.
How strong is the programming to do that? And I think that fucked me up for a long
Yeah.
time, right? Because I was like, damn, I never thought about it from that point of view, right? And it was like, so who's right or who's wrong, right? And that's when I started realizing I'm like, the government around the world, the governments around the world, they have a plan, right? And they're
Mhm.
doing their own shit. And we're just their little pawns. We're just their minions, right? And that's where is it's like I think we got to be careful, right? Because it's like, are we doing the work for ourselves? Because it used to be about protecting our country. It used to be
Mhm.
about protecting our fellow man. But
Mhm.
nowadays, it feels like people are just fighting wars, like you said, from the dawn of time to better them, not to necessarily
Yep.
better the small man, right? The common man. So, but
Yeah, it's the to use the phrase, it's when the rich wage war, it's the poor who die. And that's such a disgusting truth. But something also like you touched on, because this is also something that was brought up in my own therapy, is that issue of like you're willing to go die, you're willing to go fight,
yeah.
you're willing to kill, but are you willing to live? Because
Mm, mm,
with all the friends
yeah,
that I've lost due to suicide and my own attempts, it's just like, are you willing? You're willing to do all this violence, but are you willing to live and
right.
love? And that
Yeah,
mindset, that reframing, has been powerful. I mean, I get emotional about it all the time, but it's the truth. It's like
it
you're
is,
willing to
man.
do
Yeah,
so much, but do
yeah,
that, do more. And what's
yeah,
interesting is like it's the same thing on both sides. So yeah,
yeah,
it's a heavy subject, and I really
yeah,
wish more men
yeah,
and
yeah.
women in our military community would actually seek that end state, that life, that take that accountability. And what's also really interesting about this cancel culture aspect, it's because of our love and our sacrifice and our continued love and sacrifice that allows for the Looney Tunes that is the cancel culture. It's an ignorant state of being by those who engage in that mind virus, and they're unknowing of what actually the liberty and freedoms that they are expressing, but not in gratitude. They're doing it in spite. Oh yeah.
In spite or in fear, right? And I
Yeah,
mean, again, it's just more programming, right? But I mean, to be honest, like if we bring it back to martial arts, do we not program our own students?
that is correct.
Right. And and that's where, like if we want to jump into it, it's like we were talking before we went on of, okay, like, are we just our sensei guros and then professors, Sifu's little bitch? Are we allowed to be our own free being? Right. And
Yeah.
and that's why I love and I respect a lot of people that push against the grain. Still
Yep.
respect it, right? Always respect it. But like every one of my senseis and coaches and gurus, like I respect the shit out of them, but they
Yep.
also respect that I'm gonna do my own fucking thing, right?
You're allowed
Because
to
it's
grow.
like, for sure, right? And they're not locking me to a system. They're not locking me to a style. They're not doing anything like that. They're saying, Kevin, you learned our stuff good. How are you going to apply this stuff? I'm excited to see how your brain works with it, right? Because
Hmm.
for, I would say, the last 15 years, up until like the last year, I feel like after jujitsu black belt, I
Hmm.
really got to like chill out a little bit internally
Yeah.
because I didn't need to process everything. A big hole in my game was the groundwork, and
Hmm.
then once I got to that level where it's like, okay, I'm still a fucking white belt in jujitsu in my mind, right? But I'm a white belt in everything, right? Because
Hmm.
I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to learn something new. But it was like I didn't know the whole game. And that's why we always have to be open to the idea that we don't know shit.
Yeah.
Like
Yep. Because
really. Like
that forces us to surrender the ego and just give a state of learning, because we can only surrender our free will for so long for the sake that it's appropriate, such as we're learning. Is that there is a bit of submissive dominance issue when you're dealing with a hierarchical structure of based upon experience. Of you have a learned individual with experience giving up that time and knowledge and wisdom to an individual who's ignorant. So there is a bit of
yeah,
surrendering your free will to that system, but we can only do that for so long. And it
yeah,
is criminal, honestly, when that person who is in a state of control or has that knowledge state that's superior and by time scale and scope of the student, to keep them and a point of subjugation, because for fear of them surpassing them. But if you look at it as any functional parent should be, your students, like your children, should be better than you for the next generation. Because, to use a quote from Dune, stagnation is death and it leads to total obliteration. And if we
yeah.
don't innovate, if we just regurgitate, but if we don't innovate, we don't drive forward. And in the cases of like FMA, if we don't innovate, we run the issue of becoming obscure and lost. So
Yeah.
we have to push those boundaries,
Yeah.
but
Well,
respectful to our past.
exactly, exactly. Right. I think that's like such a super important part, right? Because I was born and raised in the martial arts world. I was born and raised in mostly Japanese martial arts, and that turned into Chinese martial arts, which turned into North American martial arts. Like there are so many different styles of mindset. But when I started the academy, like I chose kanji. One, because like that kanji is actually made by the guy that paints all of the subway stations and does like calligraphy. Like I just happened to come across him through a connection. Like that's high level calligraphy, and I love it. Like I love art. I love drawing, right? But like script is my jam, right? So when I chose that, the reason why I love characters or kanjis is because it means so much more than what it is. It's a concept. It's not this. In North America, we love black and white. It's this or it's this. It's very simple. It's separation, it's division, it's whatever, right? But when something is gray and it can mean black or it can mean white, depending on you, now we're really starting to understand martial arts, right? Because for me, everybody through, for striking, for example, you can only kick a certain way, right? You can, and very simply stated, you can kick straight, linear, or circular, round. That's it. Everything else is a depiction or version of that. And depending on your flexibility, depending on all these different things that you may or may not possess and the attributes that you've built from your training, you should be able to complete all of those. Having a Taekwondo background, I absolutely love kicking. I mean, I'm 6'4", but my legs are like of somebody who's like 6'7". Like I'm all legs, bro. I'm all legs, right? And arms. So sparring to me was quite easy. I was tall. I was punching people before they could punch me because of my long ass arms and reach. I was kicking people before they could kick me because of that. So I didn't necessarily have to use a lot of footwork because I can keep them at range. That changes your style dramatically, like absolutely dramatically. And when you have somebody who's trying to put you inside of a box, but you don't fit in that box anymore, now That's where I kind of feel like sometimes you can be limited. But I've been so fortunate that every single one of my coaches said, Kevin, you don't fit in the box. What are you going to do with this? I'll teach you this. So Gong Fu, right, isn't Kung Fu. Kung Fu is always about mastery in relation to martial arts. Gong Fu is about mastery of yourself, to me. So a cook can have Gong Fu. An artist can have Gong Fu. For me, it became about proprioception, right? And that's where the background in rehab therapy helped a whole bunch, because I was like, okay, here's shoulder flexion, here's shoulder abduction, here's all these different things, right? Okay, gymnastics can teach you how to do that as well, right? Which is fantastic, but everything can teach you how to do it. Lifting weights can teach you how to do that. So, is your martial arts system teaching you how to move your body? That's really what it came down to me. So, whether it's a straight kick or a circular kick, I don't care. What it comes down to is, do you know how to move your body in those planes of motion and master how to use your body? Right? And then once you can feel your body and once you know how to use it, then go manipulate. Then bring in your own thing. Then do what you want to do with it. But if you have an instructor that's holding you back because now you're starting to break off a little bit, it might be because you're not ready yet. And that's where the ego comes in. And that's where you have to respect, even if they're shitty as a martial artist. And I mean that with the utmost respect. Like, there are some great teachers in this world who can't do. I mean, that's where the saying comes from, those who can't do teach, right? But they just can't do it fast. But they can still do it. So intellectually, they understand teaching phenomenally well. Then you have those who can do it, but you ask them to teach and they're terrible, right? They have no idea how to show students how they do what they do. They just say, like, I met this one dude when I was doing a whole bunch of gymnastics and parkour and stuff, right? And he goes, dude, you're 6'4". You shouldn't be able to do a standing backflip. I'm like, well, that's my goal, motherfucker. You said I can't do it. I'm going to do it. Right. So he's like, okay. So I learned how to do a standing backflip. It was sweet. Right. I had to lose weight. I was like 220 pounds at the time. I'm like, if I cut down to like 190, this is going to be way easier. I'm going to change my training. So I changed my body. I changed all these things to help me get to that point that I could achieve the goal. Where I had this friend come in. He ended up going to the Olympics for ski jumping, right? And he's like, "What are you guys doing?" We're like, "Oh, we're practicing backflips today and side flips and stuff." He's like, "So what do you do? Like jump up and just like grab your legs?" And we're like, "Yeah, kind of." He's like this, hits it first try. I'm like, "You mother," right? I spent months and months and months learning how to do it, but he just had this natural ability to do it. But he was terrible at teaching. He couldn't explain to people how he did what he did. He just did it, right? And I
Mhm.
think when we have a gift, we have to be able to share that gift. And for some of us, it's the ability to teach. Some of us, it's just being inspiring, right? And just, wow, look at what that guy can do. He obviously knows his body really well. Um, so yeah, it's interesting, right? Because what kind of teacher do you have? Right? And if you know what kind of teacher you have, then you should be able to ask them questions, or play on their strengths, or ask them, like, how do I, what journey do I have ahead of me? Where do you think I lie? Right. But
Right. What's interesting is when it comes to modes of learning, because if we're talking about biomechanics, because good technique is just efficient biomechanics, but we have to contextualize what we're doing, because, like you said, the leg only moves certain ways, but we contextualize it as, are we using it for striking? Are we using it for dance? I mean, I'm of the proponent: if you can't dance, you can't fight. Let's just
yeah,
say
you
it.
love Belton, don't you?
Hell yeah, man. Old
That's why.
B-boys, though.
That's why. That's
I'm an
funny.
old
Yeah, that's
B-boy as
awesome.
well.
Oh,
But
okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
my point with it all is that we have to contextualize what we're doing physically and match it to the skill and task. But we also have to make that mental connection to understand that you have to contextualize. And part of that is of ourself, but also part of that is based upon the guidance of our teachers.
Yeah.
And because it's a social contract between us and our instructor, is like, part of that social contract is, at some point they got to let us go. At some point they got to let us pursue our line of thought and knowledge, and they have to accept that but encourage it, because to grow is to experience. A summation of our life is our experiences. So if we're surrendering our free will for somebody to dominate over our experiences, that's not freedom, that's not liberty. So I applaud anybody who's come out of that state of submission and have found that journey. Because I mean, looking through our list of people following, I mean, a lot of these guys, they're all innovators. They all had a background that they started, but they've moved past and moved beyond and have innovated. And I find it's safer for a lot of people to stay in that space of the lineage and the culture and just follow and be respectful of that line, which I respect as well. That's great. But it takes a certain level of courage and integrity and ambition and a little bit of ego to like pursue your own path, invent your own thing, and stand there for with such tenacity to say, hey, this is me, this is what I'm doing, like it or not, but this is how I move, this is how I think, and this is how I'm going to educate. And I applaud anybody who goes through that process, even if they fail, even if they're a little screwy with their process and some of the delivery methods are a little off, like this thing. But
what is it? Sorry,
it's my rubber chicken.
Oh, I thought it was like some cool new EDC, but it's just a fucking rubber.
Well, it's, I mean, you can everyday rubber chicken. I mean, I do.
You can.
In my gym bag.
You can.
But my point being is, when people innovate, they have that freedom of expression, but it comes at the cost of all the critique that comes along with it. So, yeah, it's the interesting give and take.
Well, and some people don't want to do it too, and that's fine, right? Like, once you turn 18, 21, 25, whatever number you agree with, right? Like, you do you. You're a human being. You're an adult on this planet. Do whatever the fuck you want, right? You want to cut off your dick, right? But that's the thing, right? Like, I will 100% respect you because it's you. That's who you are. But when I have a student come to me, like, the first thing I tell them, like, this is a humbling experience every single day. We put ourselves in the worst possible position, and I teach you how to fight out of that position. Hopefully, your words prevent you from ever getting in that position. Hopefully, your situational awareness, environmental awareness, prevent any of this from ever happening. This is the goal, is to not fight. But worst case scenario, if you end up there, at least you'll have some more confidence. But there's some people that just don't want to do it, right? I have people that come in, they're like, man, that was an awesome class, got a great workout, right? And then like 6 weeks go by and they're like, man, when do I feel good about myself? I'm like, never. It's like, sorry, bro. Like, I'm not here to hold your hand, right? And I run my kids program the same way, right? I'm not, well, I don't beat the kids as much, right? But I think society, to a degree, has created this idea that being comfortable is okay, right? And I grew up in a day where every day was uncomfortable, right? You have to be uncomfortable if you want to grow, right? My mom was one of the first female land administrators in the oil and gas field, and she had to deal with all of the bullshit that came with that, right? Women shouldn't be in the office, women shouldn't be taking these roles, women should be doing this. So from the beginning, I've actually had very progressive views because my mom was like, fuck you, rotate on this because I'm going to push myself through this and I'm going to be amazing. And I'm going to push and push and push and push. And she worked her ass off and she got where she needed to get. There was a lot of struggles that came with that. So it was super empowering. When I was doing Taekwondo as a kid, right? My sensei's daughter, right? No, there was no girl Taekwondo athletes, right? So she had to fight all these grown ass men, right? And I was like, I don't see sex, I don't see gender right now, right? Because all I see is that girl just kicked that dude's ass, right? So it's like, if we go like we put on gloves, it's like, I'm not going to take it easy on you because you're a girl. If there was a size difference, maybe, but like tits, vagina, and dicks don't matter. What I see is a head and a body and hands and legs and feet and knives and sticks that are trying to kill me, right? And I'm going to do my best to do that. So when we have the ability to separate and we have these progressive views, right? Or what used to be progressive, right? Is it's like we start really understanding that it's the person behind the belt, behind the sash, behind the stick that matters more than anything. And I think it's good that we respect where we learn it from, but we also have to get to this idea that the reason why they're teaching is because they've been uncomfortable and they've chosen this path, and there has to be a level of respect there. In Chinese martial arts, you don't question the Sifu, right? You walk into the class and it's like, what are you teaching today? I do this. Holy cow, your Ganda is terrible. Go train Ganda 10,000 reps. Come back. I look at it again. Your Ganda has not improved. Go do 10,000 more reps. I come back again. They don't say anything. That's a good thing. They didn't say it still sucks, right? But this is the mentality of like, you just train, you just go, right? And you just listen to that form. Where in North America, they're like, but what? Well, what if they do this? Well, what if this? Well, what if this? And it's like, those are all great questions and I love them. That's why I love the comment section. Like, I love the comment section. I used to hate it, right? But once I got past my ego and I was like, oh yeah, let's talk some shit. I'm using you motherfuckers to build my algorithm, bitch. I'm like, you guys start this whole fight. That's going to share it to more people. Haha, I got more views. Used you. But at the same point, I've got to learn so much about it because all these people just be talking shit. And I'm like, cool, you do you. I'm like, you can believe whatever you want. Your perspective and your history is going to change whether you think this technique works or not. But I know
Yeah.
through teaching and my students that when we pressure test our shit, if you're not fighting, right, and like not like killing each other, not like bloody noses or black eyes, like, but you're going hard. You just pull your punch a little bit, right? Um, you really get to see what you're made of. And that's when I started stripping away a lot of my system and the systems I had learned because I was like, okay, I really do like martial more than art. I really do like practical or self-defense more than fancy dancy stuff, right? Because that's what mattered the most to me. It was making sure I could get home, and it was a fear-based thing. But I chose to be uncomfortable all the time because I wanted to see if my shit worked. Like that's really what it came down to. I had to see, and I was like, okay, this like I have keto third degree, right? So it's like, oh, this wrist lock works until he uses his other hand and punches me in the face, right? And then I do like a Filipino martial art or fight a Filipino martial art guy. He grabs me, and I go to do a wrist lock, and I'm getting stabbed the whole time. I'm like, whoa, wait a second here. I'm like, why isn't my wrist lock working? Okay, right. In the comment section is like, you gotta break it faster. You gotta do this. I'm like, you just got stabbed while you're trying to break his wrist. I'm like, no. Acknowledge the weapon, grab the fucking knife, and then deal with it after, right? So, and then it was like size. Like I got big hands, I got good forearms. I used to be a rock climber. I lift weights, I work out, so I could do wrist manipulation techniques very easily. I had good sensitivity from Wing Chun and Hapkido. Excuse me, in all my years of training. But I have Joe Blow off the street, or let's say Joe Blow's wife off the street. She's been training me for a year, right? And let's say best case a year. And she's trying to do these wrist lock techniques on some big dude on the street. I've now messed up her neural pathway to safety and to getting back home, right? And that was my onus as a teacher of like, I shouldn't be teaching shit that doesn't work. But that was my thing. I wanted to make sure that what I taught worked. And if you like that, you'll find my school. If you don't like that and you like the more artsy side of it, that's fine, right? Like I got people that are broken, right? So their knees are busted, their back are busted, their shoulders busted. I was like, don't do my Gong Fu program. I'm like, go do the Wing Chun program. Go do the FMA program. Don't do jujitsu, right? You're gonna get messed up, right? But you can still train it, but you got to train it at your own level. So yeah. Wow, I
Yeah.
went on like 7 different rants there.
No, it's great though because it gives me a lot to play with. So going back with it is like kind of deals with why we fight, because why we fight changes throughout time. Because the priority of why is like, well, it's because I'm coming with a fear response. I need some discipline. I need some activity. I want to compete. I am going to the military. And now I'm teaching. That why changes throughout our time as we
Yeah.
evolve and mature, and that's okay. And we have to contextualize what is our why and what are we doing to apply that, and that helps with a a teacher, a mentor that's able to acknowledge that, having the breadth of experiences to say, this is not the right thing for you right now. Let's try this for a little while. And you got to trust it, and they got to trust you. Which, going back to this thing about being uncomfortable, people who have a breadth of experience in dealing with difficult things, who have a certain level of confidence, I'm of the belief it's because they start from a basis of facing adversity and active resistance to develop resiliency. We talk about mental toughness. Mental toughness is an old term, but in the modern linguistics for, especially with behavioral health, we call it resiliency. So, and we have to develop that by, again, facing adversity, facing difficult things, going through and creating the language of understanding between something that is fear-based, fear of injury, actual injury, discomfort, pain, and all those things. But that comes from experiencing a wide variety of stimulus and surviving through it. Now, a thing to acknowledge is not everybody makes it to the other side. And it's unfortunate, but that's the reality. But the people who do and have the space and time and opportunity to like explain these things, have those experiences and acknowledge it and recognize it in other people, those are, in my mind, great teachers, great mentors, because they've been there, they've done that. Just like the military, just like fighting, it's a tribal system of learning of, you've been there, you've done that. So guide and move forward.
Yeah, completely agree, right? And let's go back to the kind of reference of the Afghanistan boy, right? So you're working at a McDojo, right? Where's the perspective that they're doing good, right? They've created a safe environment. Well, first of all, they're phenomenal at business. Like, there are some McDojos that are making bank, bro. Like,
bank. That was an awful businessman.
Right? But a great martial artist, I bet, right? And it's like, so like, that's the thing. It's like, you have to give respect where respect is due, right? As long as that school doesn't say what we're doing is self-defense or what we're doing is practical, and they just say, we've created a safe environment for people to train. People are getting healthy, they're getting fit, they're finding a mental, spiritual, and physical connection to themselves. Like, that's awesome. That's great. My goal of making all of these videos was not for people to come see me. That's a byproduct of it. But I live in communist Canada, and people don't want to travel to Calgary, Alberta to come see me, right? So it's like, it's great if they do. That's fantastic. But what I love the most is when I get emails that say, do you know what, man? I've been watching your videos for a bit. You've inspired me to go and train martial arts again. Boom. That's it. I want to help the martial arts community continue to build, to keep martial arts alive. Because if it continues going the way it is, nobody's going to want to do it, right? It's going to be this participation trophy based thing, right? Where it's like, you come in, you attend a certain number of classes, and you get your belt. There's benefits to that. But the kind of hard side of it that my ego had to get over was, it's just not for me then. And we have to respect that person that's, say, going to that safe environment, that's doing what they believe is martial arts, right? Or let's just call it's arts, right? Maybe that person suffers from anxiety, maybe they're an introvert, and maybe that dojo is just the closest dojo to their house because they don't have a car and they can walk there, and they go and they just train and they fight being uncomfortable leaving the house. That's amazing. That's a pretty cool thing, that they're learning to do something for themselves that will better themselves, right? That's still being uncomfortable. And you're fighting this feeling of, I'm just going to sit at home and I'm just going to be on the comment section and talk a whole bunch of shit, but I'm never actually going to train, right? And that's where, like, you see a whole, I don't want to throw out names there, but you see a whole bunch of people that are just like, well, come to my dojo and I'll sort you out, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's cool, bro. You got ego issues. Like it's all good. Believe in yourself more, right? You want a hug, right? Because it's like you don't need to fight people to prove your self-worth. You have to, and it's gonna sound super corny, but you gotta love yourself, man. Right? I'm not talking about
Absolutely.
going home, right? But it's like, right, you have to love yourself, right? And when you learn to love yourself, people can say anything about you, right? But you also, you can't call a shitter a shitter, right? Like, or you can't shit a shitter, right? If somebody wants to pressure test your stuff, they'll come to you, right? Or you'll go to them, right? And I think that's where it comes back to, okay, why are you trading? That's really what it comes down to, right? Where you're trading, or sorry, the goals of your trading should determine what and where you trade, and seek out the instructor that may not be the closest to you, right? But is going to follow the ethics and the guidelines that you believe are most important from your training, right? I have students that, have been through a lot of trauma, physical and sexual trauma, and they're like, I just need to build some confidence. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, I was teaching this one girl many years ago, and it's like she couldn't be choked, right? So every time I go to reach my hand up to choke her, right, she was like, I can't do it today. I'm like, cool, so good. Let's do it from here. I don't need to put my hands around your throat. I could be like 10 feet, or not 10 feet, right? But like 10 inches away from you, right? And you can still at least train your mind what to do, right? And as I'm sure you know, like mental training is more than anything, right? We in Canada, we didn't have the budget to go do thousands of rounds to get good at marksmanship. So what do you have to do? You have to dry fire. You have to go in your basement or go in your shacks, and you have to grab your rifle, and you have to practice all your four marksmanship principles, and you have to be able to get really good at those things. And the more that you do that, the better. But what are you doing? Your mental training. Now, can you do that while you're sleeping or laying in bed before bed, right before you fall asleep? Can you find a way to do it? And I think finding that mental training for some people is enough. You're thinking about being uncomfortable. There's a lot of people in this world who don't even want to face that. They don't want to think it. They're like, I'm just going to bury my head in the sand, or I'm just going to bury my head in my phone, and I'm just going to get lost for 4 hours every day, crushing and scrolling through things. That's great. That helps my side business of the online business, right? But the students that choose to train with me are the ones that they want to push themselves. They want to see what they're made of. And that's not easy to do. And I think we have to respect that there's some people that aren't there. And as a teacher, we want to encourage that as much as possible. As members of the martial arts community, we have to acknowledge that, right? So it's like, don't talk shit about other styles, right? Like, at least that dude's training. Find some respect for that. It's like the whole thing, like, why can't we all just get along? Well, it's because you all have fucking mommy and daddy issues, and you just talk shit about each other because you don't love yourself enough. Right? Well, my master says this, and my master says this. And it's like, okay, good job. Do you want a cookie?
Yeah.
Like,
Or a hug. Well, what's
yeah,
interesting is,
right.
I mean, I'm all for a hug and a coffee. Um, so with the comparative valuation, because like good is a matter of perspective.
Yeah,
Because when you're dealing with people in the comments section, is this issue of, yeah, at least they're training. What are you doing?
yeah,
And better yet, like put some stuff out there, because that is my favorite, is the online critiques. It's like, where's your body of work? Where is your stuff? And this whole idea of like, I'm better than this and that. It's like, well, good and good enough is an issue of perspective, because at
yeah,
least they're doing something within the scope of their capability, because
yeah,
they may not be able to do the flippy stuff because they physically can't, but at
yeah,
least they're there present and engaging in the activity and in the mindset, versus just sitting there wasting and putting out negative energy of just being an asshole in the comment section. It's like, why don't you just take accountability and be productive and proactive and supportive? This is why I am on purpose engaging in positivity no matter what in the community. Even if I
nice.
disagree, I still am
Yeah,
supportive of anybody putting stuff out there, because that's a certain level of courage and bravery to face on all the critics out there. So,
yeah,
and even if it's not good, I'm just glad they're doing something.
yeah,
And so, like, this issue about comparative ego, that's so damning. It's so damaging. It's like you're not Filipino enough. You're not the right kind of veteran. You're not a fighter enough. It's just like, come on, guys, cut that out and let's be present and deal with yours and stay your lane, and also be in gratitude that you have people who walk in the same path, and they're at different paces, but they're still walking the same path, and you're doing it together. Now, back with like the people, is you have this issue like the 80%, the 10, the 9, and the 1. And like within the 80%, you have like a 10% of people that shouldn't be there in the first place. But that 80% is your bread and butter.
Yeah.
Those are the people who are paying the bills. And those are the people that their good is relative to their own. But the reality of getting the people that are the 9% that are actually going to go and do something with this, and the 1% is your champions, your professionals, your super professionals, your instructors. I mean, it's a matter of scale and time. But we all started in that 80%, and acknowledging that basis is important for keeping humility and gratitude.
Definitely. And it's like in the Filipino martial art world, I find like it's broken down into basically ranges, right? Like over the years, it's okay, well, who's better at largo range? Who's better at medial range? Who's better at corto range, right? And it's like, can you just acknowledge that you have strengths, right? And that's why like I was really drawn to Balintawak. I had actually learned other styles of Filipino martial arts from Guro Johanga first. And then he's like, did you know I do Balintawak? And I'm like, what's Balintawak? Right? I was like, it's not just, aren't we doing like swinging a stick? And he's like, no, he's like, this is like a close quarter fighting system. I was like, oh, cool. I was like, yeah, this looks awesome. I'm like, but I have a big stick. Why wouldn't I keep you far away from me? Right? And he's like, well, what if you can't? And it was at the like very similar time where I had started my Wing Chun training. And I was like, okay, let's be a quarter range specialist now, right? Because especially in Canada, we have so much space, right? So if like we're talking to each other in Canada and somebody's like this close to you, right? People like get uncomfortable. But when I was in Hong Kong, people are like this close and they're like, it's normal. I'm like, yo, I can smell what you ate for breakfast, bro, right? But like that in Canada isn't normal to be that close to somebody. So let's find comfort in being uncomfortably close to somebody and good with a weapon and or a stick or a knife, right? So I was really drawn to Balintawak for that, of this quarto range, right? Now I get to train with Guro Dax Williams, right? And KI is cool. It's like long range Wing Chun concepts. I was like, damn, this is nice, right? But to me, I separate my KI to bladed long range, not a stick. That's just how I do it in my mind, right? Because I can swing a stick. I've swung a stick for quite a few years now, right? And I can say as long as I lead with my knuckles, I'm cutting with the blade, which is fine, right? Um, but I just wanted to try something new. I went to see what it was like, and Dax and Norman Swanico, like there's some cool cats, right? There's some really cool stuff there. Like Katang was like, he was a genius. Like there's some savant level shit going on there, right? And I was like, okay, cool. Like let's play with this. Yeah, I feel like this is built for combat, right? Where at the same time, Gurujo Hangar, he was going into the Decampo world, right? And he's like, hey, look at all this long range stuff, really reaching strikes. Look at all this dynamic footwork. I'm like, Joel, my back's fucked up, bro. I'm like, I can't even run. You think I'm gonna be doing that kind of footwork? I'm like, I need lazy long range footwork, right? I'm like, I want them to come to me, boom, KI to Tang, like, okay, that's more my jam, right? But that was all based on my injuries, right? Close quarter combat, I can't run, right? So it's let's get good at being close, right? Medial range has always been interesting though. Mati our knees and our knees Dekadana and Boondock Eskrima, like they all kind of tie everything in together, but it's medial range is very interesting, right? Like I find it's like, are you long or are you close?
It's
Right?
what I call a transitionary range, and it's also the most dangerous because you get caught on the fly coming out or you get caught on the fly coming in. And if you stay there, you're in optimal distance to get fucked up.
Yeah. Well, you're in an
So,
exchanging range, right? In
yep.
boxing, and you're boxing in the pocket,
Yep.
right? So then it's like, okay, well, I call it a Wing Chun mindset because I go to Ip Man 2. He's on top of the roof, right? His new student comes up, I want to learn, right? And he goes and throws a boxing style punch, and Ip Man's standing there, and the punch like stops this far from his face, right? And he doesn't move, right? And it's like, well, why didn't he move? Because he wasn't a threat. He knew his range so phenomenally well that until that chest moved him, until the body came closer, he didn't have to chase the hand, right?
Yep.
So I attribute a lot of my conceptual martial arts based upon Wing Chun because it was like, it takes some cojones to be at that range, right? Where boxers, like best strikers in the world, in my opinion, for hands, right? And it's like, but they like to bang, they'll throw a punch and take a punch at the same time.
That's why I have TBI.
Great. Yeah, right. Just to go, I was like, that works great in your 20s when you're young and you're banging. And you're like, oh, I'll shake that off. Oh, are you seeing stars? Yeah, it's all good. Let's go. Right? Keep your foot in the tire, right? And it's like, okay, well, now I'm 40. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I could have fought a little smarter, right?
That's
maybe
my problem.
Yeah, right. But it's also fun, right? Some people love getting punched in the face, like kind of sadistically, and maybe they get aroused with it. Who knows, right? Right? And it's like, I think when, going back to that media range, it's like, what made your live hand the best, like for you, right? Because you got a shit ton of background. Like, what martial art made your live hand the most dangerous?
It's boxing, but actually it's fencing.
Really?
Yeah, because it's an understanding of line work and getting offline. Now, I'm not saying classic Olympic fencing, but it's understanding line work. If I gotta get offline to find that optimal position, but I have to do something with that hand to make sure I don't get poked. So if I'm clearing to give access to my lead hand, that helps. Now, the other part about that actually forced my live hand to figure things out is I transitioned from a orthodox fighter when I was fighting Taekwondo, kickboxing, Muay Thai, but because of a leg injury, and now a permanent injury that's led to 20 years and 4 surgeries, is I've had to adapt and adjust, stop kicking, and then I've had to switch my stance, especially with a focus on FMA, where the blade is lead, the weapon is lead. So by doing that, converting to southpaw and adapting my boxing that way, that has really emphasized that live hand does work in the back, but my lead hand controls the pace of it. But this backhand has to do something to make sure I don't die.
Yeah. So. Yeah, well, and see, to me, that's all Largo range, right? Where it's like, when you start getting closer and closer, do you switch your leads? Do you keep the same lead? Have you been trained to switch leads, right? Like you said, you were orthodox for probably the majority of your training, right? Like, and because I knew that, so let's just quick little chat about why, okay? Concepts. Bruce Lee. I grew up with this guy. Loved him, right? Thought Jeet Kune Do was everything. Couldn't find a really good Jeet Kune Do instructor, right? Did all my studying, so I was like, okay, what is it? It's boxing. There's some savate, some kicking in there. So Taekwondo, I got that, right? There's some trapping in there. Who's the best at trapping? Filipino martial arts, obviously Wing Chun. I was like, okay, so this is cool. They're kind of doing all these things, right? So, but the concept that Bruce Lee talked about was, as an orthodox fighter and being right-handed, that my lead hand is now 60% powerful, just simple physics, right? My rear hand, which is my dominant hand, and my back foot is now 100% power. So if I switch to a right lead now my 100 goes down to 80, but now my 60 goes up to 80. So now I'm a more balanced fighter. If my lead hand has more dexterity, it should be the first thing that I hit with. So it kind of opened up my mind, because I too was always an orthodox fighter. So when I built my system, I said, everybody starts out orthodox. White belt, you learn orthodox. Blue belt, you stay orthodox. Brown belt, Now you're a right lead fighter, and you got to go through the white belt journey and the blue belt journey again. And we introduced you to quarter range or to elbow striking range, right? And obviously jiu-jitsu and all that stuff involved, right? So now by the end of that journey, now when they become a red belt in my system, now I know how you move and what's better, right? 80% of the time, it used to be 90, and then I just graduated a couple of new red belts, right? Everybody who is right-handed became a right lead fighter. But my students who had stayed or who had way more previous training were actually better footwork, and footwork is God, right? Had better footwork as a left foot forward fighter. So that kind of took precedence for me, right? But most of those students have also happened to be smaller. So they're not going to knock somebody out with that first quick 1-2, right? Could they get range? Yes. Could they do these things? Yes. Now the thing is, like you said, introduce that knife, and now you want that knife hand forward. So in Balintawak, that stick is sometimes back, right? And it's like, well, it's turned to the back. This doesn't make sense anymore, right? So I train a guy who lots of Filipino martial arts background. He doesn't want me to mention his name. And he comes to learn Balintawak specifically from me. He's like, why the fuck is my stick behind my head? He's like, this doesn't make sense, man. He's like, this should be in front of me. Like, we're fighting right now. I'm like, we're not fighting. We're building skills at quarter range. We're building coordination, reaction time. But what I want you to think of more is making your left hand or your live hand more dangerous, right? I want this hand to do what it's always done, right? But I want both of these to kind of work together. When one is in, one is out, right? And it's a real hard transition. He said he had to turn off his martial and turn on the art. But in the attributes that are built from the art, it has actually now helped his martial, right? So to go back to the original question, like what made your training better or your live hand better, right? For you, it was Largo range. For me, it was because it was Balintawak because one, close range, put the left hand closer, kept my power hand back to smash, to clear, to control, to trap, to hit. And then Wing Chun did the exact same thing. So it's really interesting because my left hand became better, even though I'm right-handed, but I don't use it as much practically. Right? And it's like, that's the weird part.
Well, like the thing that I run into is one, it's adaptation based upon injury and composition, and also just bad training habits. For my case, I'm 5'6". Fighting Taekwondo at a heavyweight was the wrong answer. I should have been boxing and doing wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Because when I get a hold of you, you're mine. And this is where that issue that I ran into, especially with fencing and long-range fighting, that I had to be able to play at range so I could bridge to that medium and close range. So specifically with fencing is I can engage with length, and then I can cut the angle and then play in there. But I have to survive that. And the problem that I found with boxing and Taekwondo is the fact is I'm a foot and a half shorter than everybody else. So staying in forward line is a bad idea. So I have to have enough range to get them off so I can cut the angle and then get into my range. But it cost it caused me a lot of injuries, getting pegged in the face and all the concussions. So again, bad training habits led to me to adapt. But and the other side of it is my kicks are garbage because I've dealt with 20 years of a leg that's pretty much dead. So I've had to like deal with stutter stepping and shuffling to get into that. But I have to survive that first engagement with that long range implement. And this is where I've had to, again, switching leads is so important. But once again, that pocket at the corner, you're mine. I get hands on you, you're mine. But I have to survive that beforehand.
And that's not easy to do, right? Like,
no,
that's sucks. Where it's, like tuck the chin down, put the forehead there, make sure the shoulders are in, build some larger traps, right? And then try and cover and get in. And it's like, that's tough to not take shots. Against a good boxer with good footwork, you need a wall, right?
Yeah,
so now you need your environment. Yeah, exactly, right? But like, you've had to build that. Like, when I realized, and like this was probably the most humbling moment for me with my striking, was I spent 30 years kicking
Yeah, same.
and I don't kick as much anymore. My
I don't kick at
hands
all.
touch you first.
Hmm.
If my hands touch you and I don't move to continue to use my hands, then my legs come out. Right
Hmm.
now, the thing is yes, it was partial injury that did it, but it was
Hmm.
actually the conceptual mindset of I live in Canada, my
Same. Yeah.
footwork, right? It's snowy, right? I'm a biped creature, but it's also
Hmm.
because there's two times when I was involved in an injury. I got in some shit and I threw a kick and I ended up on my ass both times, right?
Yep.
And it's like, yes, I had too much to drink, right? But it's like, so I'm on my ass as a like high level kicker and I'm good at kicking, right? And I had, 6 or 7 beers, I'm on my ass. And
Doing the
now I
dying
don't have,
cockroach.
right. And now guys are jumping on me and they smash my face. I'm like, lesson learned. Lesson learned. Okay, I'm a biped creature. Keep both of these things on the floor, right?
Hmm.
Let's connect to the floor. Let's use these hands. Let's try and use it as much as we can. But that's where, if I lived in California, like everybody clowns me online because I always wear sandals. I'm like, listen, guys, I got 6 months to wear sandals. The rest
Hmm.
of the year I'm in shoes, right? So I want to be in sandals, right? So I have trained to be able to kick and do all my martial arts and flip flops. If they fall off, I don't really fall over anything like that. Yes, it's not really the best self defense thing, but rotate, right? It's like the thing that I love about it though is I don't run.
Yeah.
So I'm not running away. Why do you think I'm so highly trained? Right?
Yeah.
If I can't run away, right? No, okay, well, I could run away, but not fast.
Yep.
And
Same.
if you push me like past the K, my back's going to probably seize, the sciatica is going to kick in, and now I'm not going to be able to fight you. So I hold my ground. Using a Wing Chun concept, I'll take one step back and everything else is forward, right?
Hmm.
Or I'll try and cut an angle and move forward. But so my whole system is built off of counter striking, right?
Yep.
And in the Canadian law and a lot of laws around the world, if I'm a counter striker, I can engage. If I'm
Yep.
not a counter striker, I better know why I'm moving in, right? And when you put a knife in the hand, now you really got to know why. Your
Hmm.
life must be threatened. So my system, it took many years to kind of develop and build because I had to start thinking of all of these things. I had to
Yep.
think of the self defense aspect of it. I had to think of the laws. I had to think of my body and how it's slowly deteriorating. I had to think of, is this going to work for not just my body size, but other people's body size? And every student, excuse me, is going to have their strengths and their weaknesses. So, what am I going to teach that kind of works for everybody? And that's when you break down a very complex systems and you break it down into something simplistic. It does make the neural pathways or the training habits, as you said, at least you're creating minimal training habits, right? The simple
Yep.
acronym, as we know, keep it simple, stupid, right? Eh, for people that don't know that, just think of it like a utility belt. If you're Batman and you have 300 utility belts, right, or 300 pouches in your utility belt, you got to remember where each one is. If you only have five, you're going to use those five, right? Where
Yep.
you're not going to use the 300. And um, the other 295 though are fun to train, like
Yeah.
like double stick sit a wally. That's cool. That's awesome, right?
Doggy
Um,
Espada. That's kind of cool. Yeah.
yeah, it's cool, right? But like, when am I gonna have a stick and a knife,
Nope.
right? Like that's a tough one. That's it. Like, but I ask my students, like, okay, when would you have a stick and a knife, right? And they're like, I had my knife out. He had his tire iron. I happened to get the disarm from the tire iron. I don't have the tire iron. I have the knife. I'm like, okay, what do you do? He's like, well, I smash him and I stab him. I'm like, you're going to jail. He's like, oh
Hmm.
shit, yeah, that's right. I was like, you have to think about these things, right? So it's like, when would you, right? So let's just pose a question. When would you ever have two sticks?
I mean, to use the very comical aspect, you have a bow staff, or let's say a broom that gets broken in half, a pool cue that gets broken in
Yeah,
half,
there it is.
because we
Yeah.
see that played out in the movies all the time. But in all reality, here in Alaska, probably never.
Yeah, right. It would be tough, right? And
Yeah.
it's funny because every single Filipino martial artist I ask that question to says Roadhouse,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I got the pull cue, I smash it in half, bam, motherfucker, right? Or the Bruce Lee movie or the Dan and the Santo movie, right?
Hmm.
Same idea, right? It's like, okay, cool. The
But when am I going to
attributes
play
built
pool?
from that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. Like, yo, if somebody's swinging a pool cue at your head, you probably said something you shouldn't have, right?
Yeah,
Or
that's
you should
fair.
have left that situation a long time ago, right? Like, you don't have to fight people, right? But
No.
people love fighting, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's so funny, right? But so in Alaska, what are your carry laws? I don't know Alaska law.
Alaska is a constitutional carry state. We are free and clear to carry and use just about anything. We don't have a stand your ground. We don't have a castle law. Preemption, that's a little tricky, but we have such a loose basis of what we can or what is exercised.
Yeah,
But everybody carries here, so we have very minimal violent action with that level of crime. The crime here is associated with mental health, alcoholism, and homelessness
yeah,
and drug addictions. But there's no like people get. I mean, there's fair amount of people getting fights in bars, but the fact
yeah,
is, the likelihood of somebody carrying keeps people peaceful. So the likelihood of me going hands on with anybody and also the population at scale, it's very unlikely versus like California where I was always fighting, especially when I was a
yeah,
gangbanger. I was always
yeah,
fighting. So and being short and being brown, yeah, I was always fighting. Here in Alaska, I don't have that issue, and I'd like it that way. So and also going back to the other things about adaptation and your flip flops. I mean, it's not
yeah.
proper FMA if you're not wearing the Tisanellas. So I mean,
There it
it's
is. There it is. Yeah, nice. I'm gonna say that next time. They'll be like, "Are you Filipino?" I'm like, "Take
eh.
a guess, and I'll cancel culture your ass."
On the other one too, like adaptation of footwork. I can't run, and this is a family adage of those who cannot run fight. Now
Yeah,
you have to try to run, but the fact is, I can't run because I'm short, I'm stumpy, and I just suck at running in general because the leg issue, because of my injury. So
yeah,
I am
yeah,
forced to stay there and fight. Now I have to adapt the tools that I'm going to use. This is why I carry a firearm because I can engage multiple targets at relative distance.
yeah,
But it's that issue of I have to fight the way that my frame is going to work. Yeah, I love some Muay Thai, I love some Taekwondo, but I'm not going to fight that way because it just doesn't work. It's not appropriate. So what's more appropriate because my frame, my injuries is short range striking, trapping, grappling, and knife work. So,
yeah,
but people they don't have the breadth of experience or the guidance because of ignorance for one and availability because a lot of martial artists just like you and I they trained in the stuff that was available. And back in the day, it was only Taekwondo and Karate. Later, it
yeah,
became all these other things. Now, there's a long standing tradition of boxing, but you have to be in those areas for boxing. So,
yeah,
and that,
yeah.
that
Well, and
definitely
yeah,
informs.
for sure, right? And it's like I love sparring. Like I love it,
Mhm.
right? It's so fun. It's everything like that. But think about the bad training habits built from sparring, right? Think about the good ones, right? So good ones, you're building reaction time, right? Which gets slower as time goes on, right? Think about footwork. Think about all these great things, right? The bad thing is say in a self-defense situation, if you can't leave, you've now built the idea that you can dance and you can move around, right? So that's good. Angles, footwork, everything like that. But what if you can leave, right? Let's say Buddy jumps out of his car or jumped out of a car, right? So you know that there's a secondary person, and you square up to this guy, and you're sitting there and you're squaring up, and unbeknownst to you, Buddy driver, right, gets out, tackles you from behind, and then they get what they came for anyways, right? Where if you would have stopped dancing around and stopped choosing your strike or moving backwards, you could have exited the situation right away if possible, or hit them with a quick 1-2 and then get away, right? And at least create space, right? To be able to do something, or put an obstacle like a car in front of the other attacker and line them up, right? There's so many things that are tough. Last night we were doing drills where it was like, okay, guys, you're going to mimic being a Taekwondo fighter. So I just want you kicking like crazy. The other person is the Gong Fu student. And right now, you cannot run away. So then they're taught to drive forward, drive in, get past the kicking range, get past the largo range, get in close, find a grapple. Because if you're grappling, or at least you're in tight, right, and your trapping helped get you there, or at least not get hit in the process. And now you're in tight, and now you better either one, have some good takedowns, or choose when to disengage, or at least have your head on a swivel and see what's going on. It's a tough drill, right? Because there's a lot taking place there. Then all you do is you just change the mindset and say, now you can run away. And what happened when I said that, when we did the you can't run away first and then you can run away second, is everybody, when they should have run away, they did not. They did not look for the exit. They did not use their environment to their help. So the training habit messed them up. Then, just to kind of prove the point, I said, okay, now I'm going to let you guys run away when there's an opportunity to run away. And then we're going to switch and say you can't run away now. 95% of the students now ran properly, right?
Yeah.
And that's something tough, right? Because you're training martial arts to fight.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And here I'm saying like run away, right? So like every one of my classes, we do ladder drills, right?
Oh, there's a little break up there. It's frozen. Let's see if it'll come back in. Well, what he was alluding to is ladder drills and movement. There you are.
All good. We're back.
Yeah, we're good. So you're saying ladder drills.
Right. So it's basically learn how to run.
Mm-hmm.
Every day we learn how to run, right? And it's having good and accurate footwork. If you're at a self-defense school and they're not teaching you how to run, are they just calling it self-defense to get people in the door?
Yeah.
Right. And I know, like you and I, like we started with karate and taekwondo, we were probably told it was self-defense.
Yeah.
But do you think it was?
No. It was sport. It's sport is really what it was. And that's that thing about contextualizing what is the actual situation here, and understanding that this is art, this is combat sport, this is combat.
Yeah.
And then this is personal protection and self-defense, because that combat aspect also is very important to differentiate, because you're allowed to use overwhelming force. You're allowed to engage with lethality. You're allowed for preemption because you're in a combat warfare situation, versus a self-defense personal protection situation where you're at the reaction to violence beyond your control.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a different scenario. But martial arts, that's sustainable. Combat sport, you can use it, but it's highly contextualized based upon the circumstance and the rule set, and that's not sustainable, nor is warfare. Personal protection and self-defense, that can be sustainable because it's more of a mindset rather than the physical skill sets. Obviously, you need the physical skill sets to carry it, but it's the mindset that is more important. And this is where I think of it as an internal martial art, is training the mindset of how and what and looking at the situation. So,
and I think, it's so important that you've compartmentalized that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that you know that, right? How many of your students know that? How many of people that know that, right? And now it's like, let's bring it back to FMA, right? Like, how are you teaching to strike somebody with a stick? Like, how are you justifying starting with an angle one? Like, what do you do? I'm just curious.
So, getting away from doctrine and curriculum, how I justify for angle one is, one, I am in that optimal path for striking. I'm in that optimal path for range. And I mean, it's about positioning, because I can't hit with an angle one if I'm completely bladed. So I have to move into position to get me in that optimal path of striking. So just like in everything else, it's position over submission, placement over striking. So I have to be at the correct angle, at the correct distance, and at the correct context that will allow me to fire with that strike. If I haven't met those requirements, it's not going to work.
Yeah, right. So like, and there has to be a target, right? So
yeah.
Because if there's
you
like,
need opportunity.
if they're like this, right? Yeah, right. So
yeah.
And then legally, how do you justify teaching an angle one attack?
In the case of Alaska, it's a self-defense scenario where the defense of body and property. Now, now the question will arise in the legal sense is, why didn't you just shoot them? It's cleaner if you just shoot them rather than use the barbarism of using a stick or a knife, because it's visceral, or a baton. People have such a visceral reaction to impact weapons and bladed weapons when society has just accepted you should have just shot the guy because it's less messy.
I would say your society is
my society in Alaska, in the US, it's less messy. So.
Yeah, right. Where in Canada, like that is not talked about at all. Like, you know, I remember when I seen my first open carry when I was traveling the States, I'm like, damn, that shit's crazy. That dude has a gun in Walmart, right?
It's silly as fuck is what it is. Because he probably had a leather holster with a 1911 and he was probably mismatched camo or certain levels of overweight. And it's that he makes himself a target. He makes himself like draw attention to that. And that, again, that's that mindset of he's projecting rather than actually that mindset of personal protection and self-defense. Because if you really want to be of that mindset of proactive personal protection, is he would have that concealed because he doesn't want to draw the attention, and he will be able to engage when he wants to engage and when he's justified, rather than have that response of like, oh, there's an opportunity, I'm going to engage you.
Yeah, right. And I think that's where it's like, you know, back to the angle one, and why are you swinging the stick at somebody? Have they verbally threatened you? Right? Do you have enough time? Have you given them precursors to say like back up? Right? The whole Chael Sonnen, like, right? I can't let you get any closer. It's like, that's a genius, very quick statement. Right? Because it's like, this is my space. I'm moving back while I'm saying this. I'm showing you I'm being defensive. I'm also not engaging first. Like it's great. I like it. I really, really like it. Now swing that angle one, and in Canadian law, if you swing first, you got to have a damn good lawyer that they can prove on video basically that you felt like your life was threatened.
And
so now bring in, okay, the lawyer or the other side finds out that you train martial arts. Right? And it's like, so our laws, if we don't know our own laws, we're basically shooting ourselves in the foot. Right? And I think it's important that no matter what we teach, we have to, like what style we teach, whether it's martial arts or combat, right? Or I just simply say it's either martial arts or it's martial and arts. Right? Or vice versa, right? Like, I love swinging a stick. It's one of the funnest things, right? I love doing blade work, right? But I swing my stick for my blade, like 100%. And I only do that so I can be good at my defensive things. That's it, right? Dan Asante, when he came here, I think he said it so simplistically beautiful, was, I love teaching civilians. They want to know 1,000
everything,
pretty beautiful things, and it's great. He's like, I love teaching military. I get to finally teach the combat side of all of this training I've done to how to finish it and cut this and do this and do this and all this. He's like, the hardest people to train are the LEOs, the law enforcement officers, because they have to find the perfect level of control
and justification.
But I also think that we have to, as teachers, if you're teaching something that can kill someone, right, even a punch, right, or a kick if it's to the head, we have to teach them like they are a law enforcement officer, at least in Canada, right, where you have to be able to justify what you're doing. And that's a really hard hard thing to do all of these things in an hour-long class.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to contextualize based upon your audience and your student base. So again, the 80% versus the 10 and 9, or the 80% versus the 9 and the 1, you have different training modalities and purpose behind what they're training, and even like the difference between LEO and combat, and even to a point with soldiers and whatnot, you have to tailor based upon the rules of engagement. So the hardest part, like I said, working with LEO is that mindset of dealing with justification, legal ramifications, and this point that they come from a legal stance of moral authority, and so they're conditioned from that position of thought. So one of the things that I ran into of being complicated with working with LEO is this perception and this concept of being criminally creative, because criminals are creative to use their violence. But in the thought process and the thought experiment is, let's be criminally creative and try to look at this angle from a criminal who is going to engage in violence of opportunity, violence with purpose, violent, and all these different ways that a criminal can engage with violence. And a lot of law enforcement officers have a hard time putting it in that context because their badge, their oath, disallows it. And I find that as a major training deficit of communicating that and also contextualizing it for the student base and the student itself. So it's fighting. So as simple as fighting is, it's not easy because it's complicated in all the context and the minutia of techniques.
And I think that's, like you nailed it. It's like, so then just say we're learning to do this, so we learn how to defend against it.
Yep.
Right. And that's really just a very simplistic way of looking at it. Like, somebody swings a 1 at you. Okay, everybody, we got to learn what a 1 is first. So here's a 1, right? Let's build power in the 1, because now we're going to go into the art side of learning to master your body, learning how to swing, right? Like, a lot of students that have issue creating power in their punching, put a stick in their hand, put something weighted in their hand, and look how much better their body mechanics become.
Yep.
Right. And that's a really cool thing that we can learn from all of this, right? But that's why I love this shit. Because no matter how long I've trained, I am always learning more about myself. Right. I had a back injury like 3 weeks ago. It messed up my shoulder and my thoracic spine a little bit. And I have still had to be able to teach and train, even though I should have been training, probably should have been resting, right?
Yeah.
There's the old military mindset again, right? Right. And it's like
power through.
Well, and it was I'll just change how I do jujitsu. I'm not going to be a guard player today. I'm going to switch to a top position. I can't even frame with my right arm. So, hey guys, today we're going to do things where you don't have a frame with your right arm. So I'm going to do this side control sweep instead. And that's where, as an instructor, you need to know the whole curriculum.
Yep.
So
you can adapt.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And like, you've used the word adapt so much today, and it speaks so much to my heart, because that's the motto of the infantry: adapt and overcome.
Yep.
Right. And we have to be able to, but what the adaptation process is to me is just being present. If we can actually be present, if we can forget what we're going to do when we finish martial arts class, if we're going to forget maybe how shitty of a day that we've had at work, if we're going to forget, mom has cancer, whatever, all of these things, go to that martial arts class and just find yourself in that moment. Feel yourself, listen to your heartbeat, right? Feel your, lungs like they're burning and they're on fire, right? Your grips are no longer there, right? And I mean, that's really the gift, right? Because, and then when you can do that amongst friends or amongst people that are similar mindset, like, now we're building communities, right? And that's the thing that I really wanted, like with the FMA discussion group, and I really wanted, and Rubio's done a great job with the fight focus, right? Aperture. It's like, respect each other, but we're all on the same fucking page, guys.
We love FMA. That's why we're here.
Exactly. So it's like, so let's just fucking like be cool about it. Right? Like, it's not boxing versus Wing Chun. That's just clickbait.
Mm-hmm.
right? It's, hey guys, we're doing the same thing. We have very similar movements, but I just wish that there was less, I don't know. I very
Less
simply say
bravado.
it's less ego, yeah,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, if you really want to talk shit, like when I was growing up, as I'm sure when you were growing up, it's like, ring ring, go meet me down at the 7-Eleven. Let's sort it out there, right? Or meet you
Yeah.
at the bike racks, bitch, right? Like, and then you figure out, hey, you were the better fighter in that moment. Good job. Let's go have a
Mm-hmm.
beer, right? But I haven't seen a fair fight since I was 18,
No,
right?
because
And
fight fair is a fallacy.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the thing
it's
with it,
changed.
like we were raised in a time, in a very special time, we were allowed to engage in violence up to a certain point, and everybody
Yeah,
understood that violence is going to engage up to that point.
yeah,
But the rule set behind that precursor is that, am I going to say, if I say something or do something that's going to result in violence to myself and others, I probably shouldn't do it, because the immediate consequence of violence was there. We don't have
yeah,
that anymore. And
yeah,
this is where we run into an improportionate response of violence over a perceived offense that is not equivalent to what is utilized thereafter. And it's scary, is what it is. So my mindset is, people just need to fight and figure shit out. And you can tell the people who have fought and figured shit out, and their level of confidence, their capability to de-escalate, and their resiliency to deal with bullshit in the comment section. Because like this thing, I get so much crap for the rubber chicken, but the reason why I do it is it gives me a medium to communicate stuff that is
yeah,
really uncomfortable, to demonstrate skill, but I'm able to bring some levity and humor to the community that takes itself so fucking seriously to a
right?
point of just gross. So why not? Because clearly I'm doing this as an expression of love, because sarcasm and humor is love
Yeah,
to a point. Because from the
for
military, if
sure.
we're picking on you, we don't love you.
Yeah,
Um, but it's that, because I love this, I'm willing to make fun of it and also give something that's entertaining and silly, but still demonstrate some skill and give a lesson behind that. And for those who see and get it, my hat's off to you. For everybody else, they still run into that same issue of like, they're still not present enough to acknowledge that, let's look at the deeper lesson here. But they're still stuck in that ego victim mindset. And it's sad. And I really wish more people would take that accountability and move forward and get past that keyboard, get past that insecurity of like, well, I feel threatened by you, so I'm going to talk shit about you. It's such a weird dynamic.
yeah. But I think we are seeing a change, right? Like, I mean, even like yourself, creating this podcast, having people on that are like minded, talking about these things, right? And people listen to that, they share that, right? I actually feel like there's a lot more people that are like us,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't want to be uncomfortable to say it,
Yeah.
right? And that's cool. Like, I get it. Like, some people just won't be there. They'll fucking hand you your ass on a silver platter if you talk shit to their face, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to waste their time online, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people are built for it, some people aren't. I never thought I would be built for it,
Yeah.
right? Like, I was very quiet. I wasn't political. I wasn't anything until 4 years ago, right? And then all of a sudden, I was like, my, like, putting food on the table is now being questioned,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I gotta stand up now, right? I have to be a warrior again, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just sat on the side and did my thing and was living my life. And I was working for a McDojo, right? And I was, dude, I had salary, I had benefits, I was making more money than the school of veteran affairs had put me through. I got to train like 40
Mm-hmm.
hours a week, teach 40 hours a week. Like, man, I was living the good life, right?
Yeah.
And I gave it all up to start my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
My black belt in my system, I gave it to myself once I started this dojo, right? That was it. It was facing my own fear of believing in myself enough that
Mm-hmm.
I can pursue this on my own, right? And 13 months into that journey, I had already hit my third year goal. I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm successful. This is cool. I can't wait to see what happens. And a week after that happened, COVID hit, and I lost 55% of my students overnight.
Yeah.
And I was
Yep.
like, okay, now you're going to be tested, right? And it was really interesting because I've never been confrontational, right? I'm a pretty fucking chill dude. Like, you fuck with my family and like you just don't do
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right? Like I will stand up for the little guy, right? But or people I love. But
Mhm.
it was I think there's a lot of people in this world that just go straight to being angry,
Yep.
right? Where it's like if you actually fought them with love,
Mhm.
like it would change everything. And that's why I love my kids program, right? Yes, it's pretty cool to watch a kid like turn into a killer. Like it's awesome,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like, when my kids pass their, it's called brown belt blue stripe, right? It's when they can actually like start throwing some punches. And I get text messages from parents like, "Thanks, I'm scared of my kid punching me in the face now." I'm like, yes, mission accomplished, right? Because it's like that. Imagine the confidence that that gives that parent to
Mhm.
allow that kid to be able to go on their own. But again, it's a great attribute that's built, but the thing that needs to be built the most is for them to be able to avoid those situations,
Mhm.
for them to be able to prevent. It was something that was always taught to us, like, if I find out you get in a fight, Kevin, Sensei's going to kick your ass. I'm like, okay, shit, just don't get in fights, because I'm now being disciplined through fear. But if
Mhm.
I was actually being disciplined through love, it would be like, listen, don't get in the fight, right? Did he call you a name? Yeah. Did it hurt your feelings? Yeah. Did you go and cry about it? Did you go talk about it? Did you get over your emotions? Yeah. See, you didn't have to fight him,
Yep.
right? And here we have all of these grown babies, right, who call themselves adults that are getting names thrown at them and they're losing their shit.
Yep.
And it's like, you're out of balance, man, right? And I think there's like, that's where bouncers, some of the best people who can de-escalate situations, and it's not physical. They
Mhm.
use their physical prowess to be able to intimidate people, but man, their verbal skills are next level, like
Yep.
next level,
It's
right?
because they're
And I think,
faced with so much adversity but cannot engage. So they develop a lot of resiliency. I keep coming back to that. But again,
yeah,
offense informs defense. So if you're faced consistently with an offensive situation and if you've engaged with it, you have to have a good defense to mitigate and survive for the long run, because offense is not always sustainable, nor is defense, but you have to understand both principles to work for you in that present situation. Because when it's a
yeah,
non-permissive environment, you have to mitigate as best as you can.
yeah, yeah, which is cool, right? Because with Filipino martial arts, like, I typically haven't seen a lot of people talk about that.
Mhm.
And that's why I was so drawn to Guro Joe Hongar, because he was like, there's more to this. Let's talk about fighting. Let's talk about why we should fight. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. Right. And it was, as much as obviously I love the physical training, it was the conversations, having the beer after, right? A
Mhm.
hard day of training. It
Mhm.
was the, long phone calls that we have because he's 4 hours away, right?
Yep.
And it's those things that I've really learned to cherish the most, right? Because you get to do it. Like when Dean came and we filmed our knife defense seminar. Oh yeah, throw out a plug for that. Go buy that shit. It's really good, guys. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a really cool product. Um, when Dean came, it was the conversations we had, before, after, and during filming,
Yeah.
right? So the physical things, like, I was a big believer in knife disarms won't work, right? So I said, Dean, like, I know you like your disarms. I'm like, I got a good grip on me. I'm like, you gotta show me this disarm works, right? So it was the night before. He already flew out. We're messing around in the backyard. It's the middle of the summer, right? And I'm holding on, and then he's trying his stuff, and it's working, and then where it's not working like the way he would normally do it. And then he changed his angle, he changed his timing, he used his whole body to get it. And he's like, damn, you really do have a good grip. I really did have to change how I did that. And there
Mhm.
was a learning experience there. And because he could disarm me, one of the only guys who could legit disarm me without me making him look good in front of a demo, not just
Mhm.
him, but just in general. Um, I was like, okay, let's start training disarms, Kevin. Let's do it Dean's
Yeah.
way. right? And let's figure out how this works. But so a system that I thought was already complete in my mind, by learning another style of somebody who's so cool like Dean, it changed how I teach. It changed how I move. It changed my neural pathways. I had to change all my rules of engagement. I had to reprogram and write things down and go into meditations to allow something new to come in. And I think that's so important for anybody, no matter how many decades you've been teaching, that you have to be open to new ideas and new techniques.
Yep, because the experience is what matters. Is how we grow, and you have to keep challenging the rhetoric and the dogma so you don't fall to stagnation and obscurity. And this is again what I intend to bring to the community, aside from rubber chickens and the sarcasm, is I don't have a gym anymore. I shut down in 2019 after my suicide attempt. I'm not training fighters, but what I can do in this space is, one, celebrate people's achievements and love for our community, but I can also present my brain. I can present my thought process and create a platform to allow people to share out with that and to spread those experiences in hopes that we will all grow in a positive sense, learn from it. But again, you have to experience things. You have to have a breadth of all these difficult conversations to get those uncomfortable conversations to be present enough so we can grow. And it's important. And this is actually what is really powerful that came out of the pandemic leading into it, is we've come together better as a community and have created these platforms to have conversation. It's gone a little bit away, but it's still, the remnant is still there. So
that pendulum always likes to swing in what we call life, right? Is it, we didn't talk before we fought, now we can't fight because we're locked inside, so now we're just going to talk shit online. And it's like, I feel like we're going to find a balance as a society, as a network, as a community, where we will all get there, right? And it's like FMA is political. Wing Chun, Wing Chun is like just as bad, and I don't want to like get into it, right? But like, wouldn't it just be cool if we could have like a whole bunch of FMA martial artists come together and teach all their different styles? Right. And like, and we're lucky enough in Alberta, we have that, right? Like the PWAS gathering, there's some politics in there for sure. There's going to be something, right? But it's like, it has been one of the only safe spaces where everybody just comes and respects the shit out of each other. And maybe it's just because everybody knows that everybody in that room has a knife, so nobody's going to talk shit, right? But it's right, like you said, everybody carries. Well, then you're not going to talk shit unless you're ready to die that day, right? And I would love to see that everywhere, though, right?
And that's where competition. That's where competition is so important, because one, it gives an opportunity to celebrate all that hard work and achievement in the ring, but also gives an opportunity for people to come together and network and demonstrate what they are doing. Because I mean, tournaments back in the day, open tournaments, which were nothing but a giant marketing opportunity for schools to advertise what they were doing and to celebrate what they were doing by way of their students. And FMA would do very well for having a competitive outlet that's unified, or let alone just a cultural event where you bring in all the FMA to celebrate the FMA. That would do wonders for us, because one of the things I feel where FMA is lost is we don't have an end state of what are we going to do with this, because we go to the military, we can do combatives, but what is the end all goal of competition to allow for us to move forward? Because like with boxing, MMA, Muay Thai, competition is key. That is what we're going for. FMA, it's so nuanced and confusing in a lot of ways, but without competition, there is really no drive other than self-edification based on profession to unify and do stuff. So
and it's, I mean, I built my whole dojo on not competing, right? And I didn't think it was possible, because I grew up of You have to compete to get your school's name out there. And people see,
Mm-hmm.
hey, those guys won like a whole bunch of tournaments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go train there. So we're going to switch schools and go there, or we're even going to start training, which would even be better, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to give them my weekends, right? Like
Yeah.
weekends is my family time, right? And that's very important for me,
Yep.
right? So I had to find something, and being involved in the industry, like that's something that I learned from the McDojos, right? Of like,
Yep.
you don't need to compete to be good, right? You just need to do what you do,
Yep.
right? And if you love it, people will see you love it.
Yep. And it definitely helps that a very good social media presence helps that, especially in a post-pandemic world. So
Yeah,
here's a
yeah,
few places that people can find you. I'm fine. I'm coming up to our 2 hour mark, and I want to be
yeah.
respectful of your time.
Appreciate
So
that. Yeah.
while I'm going and presenting all your social media, do you have anything in particular you want to put out for the community to be aware of?
For you guys, like, yeah, you're clicking on the knife defense seminar there, right? So I think a lot of people got lost in the translation that the digital seminar that Dean Franco and I put together was like a live seminar because we had
Mhm.
done that previously. This is
Yeah.
actually a Facebook group that you
Oh.
can go to, and you purchase it. I think it's 99 bucks still. Yeah. So you purchase for 99 bucks. We add you to the group. You can ask us questions about all the training. All the videos are uploaded there. So think of
Mhm.
it like a new school Facebook DVD,
Yeah,
right?
it's a
So
library. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right? So you go onto there, you train all the shit, and then you learn it. So yeah, like I'd really love to be able to push that, um, because it really is a great product. And I mean, like, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but like to a degree, like Dean and I, like, we have been around this industry for a long time. And as
Mhm.
far as it goes for knife defense, not knife versus knife fighting, not stick versus knife, this is just somebody ambush attacks you. Do you know what to do?
Yeah.
Dean and I fell in love with the idea of 2-on-1. And
Mhm.
he has his 2-on-1 double catch technique. I'm more of a bar and catch guy. Um, so you get to see both. So it's like you get to see my take on it, you get to see his take on it. We deal with all your attacks. Yeah, what's up, Dean? He just showed up, right?
Yeah.
Of course. Yo, Dean, we were just talking about you, right? But it's like this knife defense seminar is probably like I have my Gong Fu stuff and it has some nice stuff in there, but I'm super proud of the Gong Fu seminar. It's my system put out to the world
Mhm.
with the Budo brothers. The knife defense seminar, though, is probably the thing that's going to save more lives, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest. And that's my goal, right? So if you guys can, please go and purchase that. I think it's a very cheap rate for how much information that you guys are getting with that. Plus, you can talk to us, right?
That's
Like
cool.
it's, hey, like here's a comment, here's a group section, here's a thing. Like, hey, Kevin, I was trying to do this. This wasn't really working. Is there something going on? I might be like, I don't know. Like, talk to Dean, right? That's his kind of video. That's his section. So that's something that isn't really offered with DVDs. Dean is just fantastic. He loves this stuff just as much as I do, and like he will answer any and all of your questions. He'll even like make a video of like, hey, this is me and my training partner. I hope I'm answering your question. Is this what you're asking? Yes, of
Yeah.
course. Like people that have purchased it aren't using that. Like you're getting free information and free private lessons from myself and from Dean, which is great. Other than that, go to budobrothers.com, check out the digital seminars on there. Um, it's my system I put out to the world with in conjunction with Budo Brothers. But honestly, and it's gonna like I can't believe I'm a YouTuber now. Like and subscribe, guys. Like that's how I make my money. Watch the videos, even if like you gotta like click play on your thing and then go take a big dump or something and let it just run through. That's the only way I'll make money off of it, right? Like I need to make money to keep this going. Canada's messed up. I got 225,000 followers on Instagram. I don't make money on that shit because I live in Canada, right? I got
That's so awful.
351,000 followers on TikTok. I make zero money because it's on TikTok because I live in Canada. So go to YouTube. YouTube's where I'm actually making money right now, and I'm not making a lot. It's an investment that I'm trying to put in for you guys. Yeah, there's the digital seminar there. You can see in all those modules, if you like punching, there's kicking,
Mm-hmm.
there's your mitros you can practice, there's your ground fighting, there's some of your knife to stuff. And then there's even some like Qigong stuff in there, right? Some soft side of the martial arts to help you just kind of chill. Um, we got lots going on. So yeah, I
Yeah,
really appreciate you, man. Yeah, I appreciate
absolutely.
you doing a shout out there. Yeah.
Just as a side before we close out, I got to meet
Yeah.
Eric at Water and Steel this year, and holy crap, he's an energetic, pleasant
Right?
human being.
Right?
Yeah, he's
Oh man,
fun.
yeah. They're great dudes. Like Kyle and
Yeah.
Eric are just fantastic dudes. They bring energy into this world. They're just trying to spread martial arts and do some great things.
Hmm.
We're boys, and you know they're out of Calgary too. But these guys travel all over the world to film with everybody. They're
Yep.
just filming with Sifu Singh, and it's like they just filmed with Belton. They're
Yep.
awesome. They're just trying to put stuff out there. They make some high quality products. Like when I say like high quality, like you are paying for it, but
Hmm.
you know, I can back that up, guys. Like it is high quality stuff. And they have a crazy guarantee, right? So if any of their
Hmm.
shit ever broke, give them a call. They're some really good dudes. So yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate me and Eric there at Water and Steel, because like the dedication to craft. Like he was for 2.5, 3 days in his rig, chasing all us down in all black in the heat,
Yeah.
12 to 16 hours. It's like,
Yeah.
if that's not love for the craft, then I don't know
For
what
sure.
is. So yeah, my
Yeah. His
hat's off
back
to
was
them.
his back was quite messed up after that. Like he trains on Tuesdays. He's like, yo, I
Yeah.
don't think I could do jits for a bit, man. Like I had to carry that new rig. And it's like, cool, man. Like all good, right? But that's the sacrifices we make. Everybody does it in their own way. I mean, a big shout out to you, man. Right?
Yeah.
Like this is
Thank
cool.
you.
You know, being able to see the videos that you're doing, and I love the message that you're spreading. Getting to know you more today was great. I've always seen the
Yeah.
rubber chicken. And I'm like, I don't know if this dude has a fetish for like plastic things or what, right? There's a there's a lot to be said about you know what you're doing for veterans and just giving them
Hmm.
people your vulnerability about your suicide attempts. That's going to help a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And I think you know being able to be that powerful and to be able to know that you know you've seen death or you've cheated death, you could say, and that you've come back from that and you're here and you're living in this world, like that's awesome, man, right? Because people like
Thank
you
you.
we need on this planet. So yeah, keep spreading the good word, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Um, yeah, I think that's a great place to close out. And
Sweet.
again, thank you for the gift of your time and the messaging you put out and all that sacrifice, because the work is there. So
Yeah, man.
let's
Let's make this
celebrate it.
world a better place. Like
Yeah.
let's actually make this world a better place. Not some bullshit political thing like, oh, we're gonna try. Like let's do it. And we do it in our actions, right? And I
Let's
think it's very important.
be the change. Be the change.
Yeah, buddy. You
Well,
got it.
I'm gonna drop us down, do the
Sweet.
outro, hang out in the lobby for a little bit, and yeah.
Awesome.
Well, everybody, that was Kevin Goat. That was an excellent episode. I am glad everybody got to hang out with us for 2.5 hours, 2-ish hours. This will upload to Spotify and YouTube thereafter. But again, today we really didn't actually talk a lot about FMA, and really with the show, it is an FMA show, but it's so much more. Just like Coach, you're more than a professional punching bag. Guro, it's more than just the knife, the stick, and the death stabby stuff. There's more that we can offer. So I'm happy to provide an opportunity for people to share out all that positivity, those things that they are willing to offer. And so, yeah, just let me know and we'll bring you on. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. Have an awesome time, and I'll see you later.